Hey everyone, welcome to the Dirt Trail Running Podcast, the Coffee with Coaches edition. I'm Coach Loretta and I'm here with Coach Reese. And we were just chatting about life and stuff before we got on, so we got on a little bit late. As you can see, I'm here in my camper van again, and we're in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan near Marquette. And this weekend is the Margie Jessic race. So there's bike and there's running races. We're here to support a couple of people. Actually, one that I used to coach in middle school, track and cross country. I will be supporting him as he's running or doing the 100-mile bike, which is kind of fun because it's kind of a throwback. He's now like, I'm going to say 25. So I guess that makes me old, but so that was fun. And then I'm also going to be crewing and supporting his dad, who's going to be doing the bike run, which is about, I think about 100K bike and around a 40 some mile run. So that's going to be fun. We're really looking forward to it. We've been spending some time on the Heritage Ore Trail that runs along right where we're camping. I ran to Marquette and back one day and to Ishpeming and back another day. Beautiful trail. Have you ever been on the trail, Reese? Have you ever been in the UP in this area?
No, I haven't. I've never been to the UP. I would love to go. I think the
Oh,
furthest north I've ever been is Bayfield, Wisconsin. So for anybody that knows Bayfield, awesome place right on Lake Superior, but never been to the UP.
oh my gosh, I can't believe it. You seem like you would have been to the UP at some point in your life. You
No,
and
I you
Deanna
know
need to make a trip. It's amazing. You would
Yeah,
love
yeah. My partner Deanna and I have been talking about it a lot. She's got some family up there, so we were thinking about going the weekend of Midwest States
it.
after
Okay.
pacing and volunteering. But I didn't feel right taking off of work, and it's like 5.5 hours for us to get to Midwest States, and then it's still like another 2.5 hours or something like that to get up to like where they live. I think it's Houghton, which is like
Okay.
almost as
Yep.
far north as the UP goes.
Yep. Yep.
So
Yeah.
no, but
Yeah.
never been there. But it sounds like fun.
It is fun. We actually came up through Wisconsin. We've never been that way, but that's the way we came through. We usually cross the Mackinac Bridge and come up. But yeah, it's nice and just enjoying life and having a trails all over, all around me has been amazing. So
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, you just
yeah.
came back from Colorado too, so I mean, you're living the life in the outdoors there.
Yeah, yeah. I'm missing my mountains in Colorado a little bit, and I'm missing the arid temperature compared to this humidity.
Yeah,
Day one run here and the humidity was rough on me.
yeah. I would much
Hey,
rather
welcome back to
suffer
Michigan.
chapped lips and dryness and
Yes,
altitude than like humidity for sure.
for sure. Me too. Yep, for sure. So how's training going for Hennepin? It's coming up.
Training's been going good. Just we're a couple weeks out now. What, like 2.5 weeks, maybe? Yeah, 2.5 weeks,
That's
almost
moving
three.
fast. Yeah.
Yeah, it's going by way fast. Yeah, just I mean, now is about the type of time in training where it's like I'm starting to decrease my mileage. I'm like eliminating some of the double days. Really just trying to address like little aches and pains for anybody that's been following along. One of my legs, the one that had the potential stress fracture, has always been kind of like in the back of my mind, like the fracture spot that like was really bugging me for a long time. It has finally healed up and that's gone, but there's always some little things, right? So I think for other people that are out there, like compared to our last week's conversation, like I'm in that bucket where it's like, okay, like I've trained enough, I don't need to cram, like just kind of like ride it out these next couple weeks, get outside, do some higher quality things every once in a while, but don't go overboard and listen to the body more than not. And over the past couple of days, I've noticed that just decreasing the volume a little bit, like decreasing some of the intensity, is making my ankle feel really good and really awesome. So it'll be great to have that thing fully healed up. So I mean, it's a good lesson for everybody out there that like, hey, sometimes like the body just needs like a decrease. It doesn't need you to stop altogether, but like body just needs a decrease in some sort of intensity or volume to then soak up all the good energy that and good training you've been putting into it. So but that's what's going on with me.
Nice, nice. Well, recently I've been talking behind the scenes. Well, we're always talking about something, but the most recent thing that kind of came up as a conversation is time on feet, or as we recently read in a magazine, TOF. I've never seen it quite abbreviated like that, but came up. I think it brought up a lot of conversation, and I think there's a lot of different thoughts on what is time on feet, what different people perceive the definition of that is. So we thought we would talk about that a little bit today. I think it's kind of been on my mind a little bit. Thinking about my training has really shifted, right? Being in Colorado versus being in Michigan, because I was doing a lot of climbing. I was spending a lot of time, but my volume of mileage has gone down but my time has been as high or higher, doing some different things. So I've been thinking about time on feet in that way versus,
Mhm.
maybe other ways people talk about it. So do you want to start out with your definition of time on feet and just kind of catch?
Yeah, for sure. And before the topic even really gets off, I guess I'll digress and just, speaking of weird acronyms we've never heard before. So I've never seen time on feet abbreviated to TOF either, but maybe that's a new thing. Endurance Planet, a couple years ago, I remember hearing FASL for the first time, FASL. Do you know what that stands for?
I don't.
Okay, feet above sea level.
Ah,
That's
that's a good
it's
one.
like this, it's the same thing
So
as
I've
saying
been
like,
doing TOF and FASL all these weeks and didn't even know it.
exactly. A lot of TOF and a lot of facile. But okay, so I digress. So my definition of time on feet, and you know what? Maybe before we get into that, let's mention the article that brought
Oh
this up.
yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
as you said before, like we had a good hour-long conversation, what, like 2 days ago,
Mhm.
through text, just about like time on feet and how we perceive it and how we actually use it in training and where it's beneficial and what it's beneficial for. But I just want to bring up the article that kind of spurred the conversation if anybody wants to go read it. It's
Yeah,
called
yeah. Oftentimes, Reese and I may find something, some research or some article that we see, and we'll text it to each other, and then it becomes a little conversation. So
Oh,
here
for
you go.
sure.
Here's the inside of our heads.
Okay, so it's from GQ. This just popped into my inbox randomly a couple days ago from Loretta. The title is Why Time on Feet is Such a Powerful Measure of Endurance. And to just, summarize and paraphrase the entire article, they basically say that time on feet is going to be one of the most important metrics for determining your long distance endurance success. So the way that they define time on feet is time on your feet spent running, spent moving. So now that we got that out of the way, like definitely everybody go read that article. It's great. It's cool. It'll take 5 minutes of your time. Maybe we'll link it in the show notes. But my personal definition of time on feet very much aligns with that article. It is get as much time on your feet as you can in a running pattern, any type of pattern. And by that, I mean any type of velocity. Or if it's pertinent to your race, get as much time hiking or walking as you can. I want to add a little caveat to that though. Time walking, time hiking, the closer that you can make that look like the way that you're going to move during your race, the more I consider it actual time on feet training. So for me, say if somebody's like, like myself, I'll use myself as an example. Over the past couple of weeks, I've been a lot more desk bound with the work that I'm doing now. Before I was at a clinic and I was on my feet, I was moving, I was walking fast, back and forth along a good stretch, sometimes 40 to 50 feet, if not a little bit more, when I'm power walking from the break room to the PT room to wherever. I was always getting up and down off of the floor with patients, always on my feet. Now, a lot of time on my feet is spent on my stand-up computer in front of a desk. I don't consider that time on feet training. It is time on my feet. I don't consider it training whatsoever. Reason being is because just because I'm standing in one position, sure, I'm putting a little bit of fatigue on my body, but is it going to relate or transfer as well as it could have as if I was walking with purpose during my day job or if I was outside hiking on trails like you were out in Colorado? Sure, I consider what you were doing to be time on your feet training, right? Especially if you have a mountainous 100 miler coming up or a mountainous race where you're going to spend a majority of that time hiking because of the fact that like some of that time that you spent hiking is very specific to what you're going to be doing in the race, right? Like for me, I've been working since 8 o'clock in the morning now. So we're going on about like 4 hours here. And just a little sneak peek for the viewers, I've been standing for most of the day, right? This isn't time on feet training. This isn't what the article is talking about. And that very much aligns with my view of what I consider time on feet. I consider time on feet, time on my feet, moving in the way that I'm going to move during my race. Loretta, what are your thoughts?
Yep, yep. I mean, I agree. I think that when we're I mean, a lot of people are using that word, right? And when we get in the ultra running committee, it's about time on feet. So you're not looking at, okay, I worked 8 hours on my feet and I ran an hour when I got home. I wouldn't say you did 9 hours of time on feet today, right? You did 8 hours standing, but your hours that are going towards your mileage or your volume for the week for your training with purpose would be that hour that you did after work. Now, I do think that when we're looking at that, I think about that a lot with athletes that are doing a lot of time on their feet when they're working. The nurses that I work with that do 12-hour shifts that are, moving and working all day, people that are standing at a desk, I think that it does contribute to the fatigue that you may feel when you go out for a run after work. And it might have some psychological effects for you, right? Because now you know that you've had to put in a hard day of work, you've been on your feet all day, and now I have to go home and put in an hour or 2 hours of training. So mentally, that might help make you stronger. So if you think of it in that terms versus actually your training time, I think that you could maybe have some positive impact on you. It might help you think, oh wow, I worked all day and then I did this. I'm going to be able to work all day or go all day doing a 100-mile race because I've been doing that every day.
Yeah, and I believe, just to kind of like summarize and recap and add my thoughts to that, I think that's the biggest thing that we see as coaches when we talk about time on feet is people want it for primarily two reasons. The first reason is because it's going to add fatigue to your muscles before you go out for your afternoon run, in the hopes of simulating what it's going to be like after you spend a long time on your feet and you're still moving in your race, right?
Right.
So for that reason, a lot of people consider, okay, well, if I have to be working, if I have to be at a stand-up desk, like I can squeeze a little bit of extra like training, quote unquote, like training out of it if I can seriously fatigue my legs and then move through them at the end of the day. So I don't necessarily agree with that, but we'll get to that later. The
Right.
second reason, like you mentioned, is going to be the psychological benefit of putting in a lot of time on your feet and mentally thinking like, oh, I was just standing up all day and then I went for my run. I can do this, right?
Right.
So we oftentimes talk about psychological benefits in the coaching world as having an extreme level of transfer, right? And that's the whole reason why you hear a lot of people on a lot of podcasts and a lot of articles say that like ultra running relates to life, right? Because the mental transfer is very fluid back and forth. If you can get used to doing hard things in day-to-day life, like doing the dishes that you don't want to do, or going to the supermarket when you don't want to go to the supermarket, or whatever, you can take that mental skill of being able to grit through something and apply that to ultra running. So I guess, regardless of the mental benefits that you can gain, there's a lot of ways that you can mentally gain benefits towards your ultra marathoning without having to stand up all day. So I don't typically use like stand up like as a proxy for training to get somebody mentally prepared to do a race. It just there's a lot more efficient ways to do it. What do you think about that, Coach?
Yeah, I agree. So you're not going to get any cardio benefit, right, by just standing in one place all day. And we know that. And so I would never prescribe it for an athlete. I wouldn't say that you couldn't stand up all day, but I think you're right. There's other ways we can do it. I think that moving throughout the day in just different ways it can be really beneficial too, right? So taking some work, if you do work from home and maybe you do stand up sometimes, maybe you do sit sometimes, you can take moments where, okay, I have to go to the bathroom. After I go to the bathroom, I'm going to do some squats, or I'm going to do some single leg squats, or kind of mix up movements through the day to keep your body moving. But I wouldn't recommend it as saying, oh, this is what you have to do to be ready for a 100-mile race or any other race.
Yeah, for sure. So like, although I don't like, okay, so people listening to this or watching this are probably like, well, then why the hell are you standing up? Why have you been standing up for the past couple hours while you've been working? And like if we put down the psychological benefits, right?
Mhm.
Like we can train psychological benefits by having somebody do like 30 minutes worth of like math equations before going out and doing the run. Like they've scientifically shown that cognitive load at the end of the day, when your cognitive load is higher, your performance goes down because your brain can't produce as much drive to the muscles as when it's fresh. So, you know, like most people will get the mental performance of just being able to psychologically get through their run at the end of the day, even if they're sitting down all day, but like attuned to a mental task, right? I think we've all had those work days where we're just we're so mentally exhausted at the end of the day, even though we haven't moved a muscle, you know.
Mhm.
But you feel this whole body thing, so you can get those mental benefits whether you're standing or whether you're sitting. But regardless of those, like I think what we were mentioning before is like I would personally rather see somebody uh, use that stand up time for health and well-being instead of
Mhm.
thinking, okay, this is training. So
Yeah.
back to why the hell have I been standing up for the past 4 hours? I've been standing up because I went for a morning run and I noticed that if I stand up, I'm more likely to fidget around, kind of sway left and right, stretch out my glute meads. I'm more likely to, you know, roll my ankles a little bit if they're getting a little tight, maybe do some soleus raises or some calf raises if I'm on the phone and thinking, things like that. I'm more likely to just stay moving. And I notice too that after I'm done with my run and I go into my work day, if I sit down for an hour or two, I get up and I'm like, oh, creaky and I'm stiff. So it just kind of helps me stay like I wouldn't be doing these motions if I was in a chair, you know?
Right. Right.
Um, but with that being said, as somebody who's new to standing up for most of the day, just in one spot at a workstation, if I only do that all day long, I get to my afternoon runs, and my afternoon runs are terrible. Like my coordination is off. Like my joints, like my knees just feel like they've been compressed together, you know, like my femur and my tibia. My hips feel really tight. Like my stride doesn't feel fluid. So I think what you were just saying before is what I would align with too, is that like, you know, like standing up during your workday is it's not really ultra training. It can be used as health and longevity training, right? Like if I'm standing, my hip flexors aren't super tight. I'm more likely to get into a split stance and like stretch out my hips if they are feeling a little bit tight, which I'm doing right now. You can't even see it on screen. Um, but at the same time, if somebody strategically uses sitting breaks to deload their joints and just get into a different position, you can get to your afternoon run having the cognitive load of your workday, but then still having the physical freshness to then go and like nail your run. I would rather have athletes nail their run, whatever it is. If it's nailing the easy run, if it's nailing the workout, like whatever it is, I want you to show up to every run as fresh as you can be, because it's only going to help reinforce movement patterns, as well as decrease your injury risk, right? Like if I don't feel fluid in how I'm moving, like I'm much more likely to trip, roll an ankle, maybe pull a muscle, like whatever it is. So what I've been incorporating in my workday is like a movement snack. I like the way that I mentally think about them are like quarter snacks. Like, you know, my workday, I make 8 hours, whether that's podcasting, like like sales work or training, coaching training, whatever it is. Every 2 hours, I'm like, okay, let's take a couple steps, refill the water, refill the coffee, go to the bathroom. I kind of have like a mental hack myself. Every time I go to the bathroom, I do 5 air squats just to get things moving again. So I usually try to do something like that every 2 hours, right? So at least 4 times during the day, like I'm getting up and I'm moving around. And then you add in that fidget time of if I'm standing, I'm just kind of moving my body because I don't want to sit still, right? Um, it's a little bit harder if you're just like typing like this, right? Because you can't really do calf raises or kind of fidget around if you're typing. But if I'm standing up, I'm more likely to pace around while I'm on a phone call. So, like, I don't consider that training though. You know,
Right, right, right.
I
So
want
I
to
think it's
use.
definitely, yeah, it's definitely beneficial for us, I think, as humans to do some standing, to do some, different movements throughout the day rather than just sitting in a chair all day too, right? But
Mhm.
but that's not what we're here for, right? We're talking about training for an ultra, and we're like, okay, what is really time on feet when we're thinking about training for an ultra? So when we're thinking
Mhm.
For an ultra, time on feet is doing things with purpose, right? You're running with purpose, you're hiking or walking with purpose versus just choosing to stand or, or your job is standing, right? I mean, it's not that you're not getting benefit from it for your health and well-being. It might just not translate into your training for your ultra.
Yeah, and I mean, like a good way to think about this too is like, if I'm preparing somebody for a 100-mile race and they only run 5 miles a week, like that, 10 miles a week, whatever. If I tell them, you know what, like, just don't sit down during the day. Like, I've never had somebody stand their way into their ultramarathon
Right,
finish
right.
because
Yes, right.
standing is not the same movement pattern. It's not the same core engagement as when you're trying to locomote.
Right.
So, now to like bring in some other examples of professions that we coach through, right? Like you're coaching somebody who is a nurse, right? So
Mhm.
that's a lot of time standing.
Yeah.
Um, Not necessarily a lot of time running training, right? But if she's preparing for ultras, especially like in a hospital like corridor, if she's got to make an extended walk and she
Mhm.
thinks, okay, I'm gonna walk like I'm trying to get there, not like oh, I'm just taking a leisurely stroll, the closer she can get to that same movement pattern as she plans to hike when she's racing, the more I would say that that is what I would call time on feet, right?
Right, right.
So she's probably
And
getting a lot of time on feet in that same pattern of movement that she's going to
mhm.
use for her ultra race because of her job. For
Right.
somebody like me, like my steps during the day are like leisurely going to the bathroom and like standing up or like leisurely going over to fill up my coffee. It's not like I was at the clinic when I
Right.
was walking for 30 seconds from here to there and I was doing it with purpose.
Yep.
Like that's more of the time
Yep.
on feet training that we're talking about.
Yep. I agree. And
So
I think you can be creative. This is going to go off a little bit. Back to our nurse, I coach several nurses and they are getting, I think, some time on feet during the day. They're very busy with moving from one place to the next. We also incorporate, depending on what kind of goals they have, stairs, like, okay, so let's do stairs during the day while you're, there. Let's maybe put a little bit of heavy backpack you carry on the stairs when you're out throughout your day. So I think you can be creative with making it more specific to alter training with doing things with purpose throughout the day of your workday. Does that make sense?
yeah, for sure. And like that is like my athletes, and we mentioned this on the podcast before, like that's my idea of collecting heartbeats. Like collecting anything that's above like a baseline worth of heartbeat. Like I'm standing right now, my heart rate's at a baseline. I think it's at like 40 or 50 beats per minute. Like this is not training. Um, but if somebody's out there and they're walking, they're going up and down the steps, they have a backpack on, like that's a lot more specific to what you're going to be doing in the
Right,
race. Although it's not that consistent, sustained stress that we do through actual running training that's going to give you the most bang for your buck, it's a way that we can influence our health, our well-being, and our ability to move fluidly during the day for an extended period of time.
right.
I also coach this guy who works for the Forest Service, and they're getting through burn season, and the guy puts in like 20,000 steps per day. Like he's carrying heavy equipment, he's got a heavy backpack on, he's got like the jackets on. Like, I mean, his heart rate is probably elevated 20 or 30 beats above baseline, still in like a zone one out of like a 3 or a 5 zone model. Um, I would consider that a lot better, like
Mhm.
time on feet training, collecting heartbeats than probably anything else. For the fact that like when he gets done at the end of the day, like sometimes he'll text me and be like, "Dude, I am smoked. Like I am like my arms are tired, my legs are tired. Like it's going to be a grind to go out and train." With which then I say like your workday was your training,
Yep.
right? Like that's when okay, if you are absolutely smoked, now I would say it's arguable that you even need to go on your run today. I would rather have you hang out for the next 3 or 5 hours, hydrate, eat some good protein, have a nice meal, get a good amount of sleep. So that way tomorrow, when you don't have as wicked of a day, now you can actually go out and put in some higher quality running training.
Right.
So if your idea of time on feet is what we're describing as just time standing, and you get to the end of the day or you get to your run and you feel too exhausted to really nail those intervals or to feel like, yeah, I'm flying or to be excited about your run, then you probably need to take some sitting breaks or some movement snacks. So I think the magic of standing is going from a seated to a standing to a seated to a standing to a seated to a walking position. You're always changing positions. I don't know who to attribute this quote to, and I really need to find it out. But my favorite quote ever, besides motion is lotion, is the best position to be in is the next position. Meaning, like, I don't care if you're standing, I don't care if you're sitting, if you're not moving, regardless of what position you're in, if you're not moving, you're sedentary. So we want to limit the amount of time that we spend in one static position, whether that's sitting, standing, laying, half kneeling, long sitting, whatever it is. I just lost my train of thought. But anyways, so do you have any other examples of like athletes or problems that or not problems, examples of time on feet?
Oh, I was trying to think of that. I have some teachers that I coach that are also, spending a lot of them are spending a lot of time on feet during the day,
Mm-hmm.
standing. But is it going towards their training? Most likely not.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe they're a PE teacher and they're chasing kids around and such.
Yeah. So, I think another topic that we should touch on is, so we've talked about like people say that I want to use time on feet for mental training, with which we can then say, well, instead of using time on, or not time on feet, we should re-say like time standing. A lot of people say like, I want to use
So
time standing to
should
get,
we call this, can we coin this TOS? Time
yes.
on
I
standing or time stand
love it.
TS?
Yeah, not to be conflated with TSS, just TS. But yeah, so with which we can say then like I would rather you like be seated for some of the day, get some recovery benefits, take your movement snacks, feel fresh, and get the mental benefits of just having like a mentally tough work day. Or maybe you help your kid with some math homework if you're not too math inclined at the end of the day before you go out for your run, to get that mental load. But a lot of us don't have a problem feeling mentally exhausted by the end of the day. I think we're all type A people with a lot of things going on. So typically I don't tell people they have to mentally put anything else on their plate. But I think for the people that are like, yeah, but I really want to experience what it's like to be moving on tired legs, I would say that there's a much more efficient way to do that. I would rather see people go from sitting, standing, sitting, standing to taking their movement snacks, getting a little bit of recovery time in the chair during the day. And then before you go out for your run, if you're really looking for, I want to simulate having really tired legs, do like a 15-minute like leg routine, a 15-minute strength routine, a 20, because then you're going to be getting your body into different positions. You're going to be getting the strength benefits of, going into flexion extension with your hips, which is really going to, help with your uphill and your downhill, like trail travel. But you're going to very succinctly within 15 or 20 minutes, put a good amount of stress on your legs and then be able to go out and run. Well, now they're warmed up for the running, right? Like I've never stood my way into being warmed up for my run, right? So like if I go from an all-day stand-up session and then go try to run, I'm like, damn, everything just feels creaky and blown out, right? So the strength training is not only going to like help your running, it's going to help your strength gains, it's going to help your mobility. It's going to work on the areas that you're not working on when you're running, but it's going to help you warm up for that run. And then I promise within the first mile or two, you're going to be like, oh yeah, my legs feel a lot heavier than they typically would going this pace. So I don't think it takes 8 hours to get to the point where you can have smoked legs and then go out for your run. I would rather have people be recovering during the day. So that way, when they do their running or their strength and then running, like they can make that higher quality.
Right.
What are your thoughts on that,
I
Loretta? I
agree.
mean,
I
I
agree,
always
but
love to see people do more strength, but
right. I agree. But I think that I want to make it clear that we're not saying that standing desks and standing during the day or jobs that are standing is bad. I just want to make sure
yeah,
we put that out there. It's not a negative thing, but here's ways to enhance your training if you
yeah,
are the person that is standing or has a very physical job. I think also as a coach, I like to know that, right? I like to know what they're doing during the day because things that we're doing, especially your example with your athlete, they're stressors, right? When we're looking at balancing the week of training, we want to look at all the stressors a person has in a week to make sure we have a good balance as well. And some of those things are going to count, right? Towards
yeah.
that.
Yeah. And, like standing all day, I'm stretching out my quad right now as I'm standing. I wouldn't be doing this if I was seated. Um, uh, Shoot, what was I going to say? Totally just lost my train of thought. Maybe I need another coffee.
We did talk about how standing is mentally working your brain, and maybe you need to take a
That's it.
break
That's
right
it.
now, Reese.
That was the
Sit
point.
down.
Yeah. So we were talking, and I'm not aware of any studies. This is totally personal anecdote, but we both like came to the same conclusion as we were talking, and in that really mentally cognitive, really highly cognitive demanding things like looking at spreadsheets, looking at numbers, crunching numbers, like reading and analyzing something on the internet or expense reports or whatever it might be. I notice that when I'm sitting, I'm a lot more mentally engaged with those high demand things. So during the day, maybe that's the time when you take that sitting break is like, hey, I have an hour or two of flipping through these numbers and I got to be really in tune with it. That's when I'm going to choose to sit down. Um, Personally, I'm a lot more social. I use a lot more gestures. I'm a lot more mobile when I'm talking with somebody. Um, if I'm standing up as opposed to sitting down, I feel like I just have more emotional connection, or I'm just more social if I'm standing up. And I kind of made the two and two when we were talking before, is that like we don't sit down and talk at parties. Like usually a lot of people are standing with a drink in their hand talking. Yeah, it feels more natural for me to be standing and be social, you know?
Yeah.
So like I try to take my phone calls while I'm standing, while I'm pacing back and forth, while I'm on a podcast talking back and forth like this. But like we were talking about before, like I take coaching my athletes really seriously. And I really like to analyze like the spreadsheets and look at their runs and look at the numbers. I'm always sitting down for my coaching work for sure.
Yep.
So um, so maybe that's another way. And just, from personal anecdote, like, yeah, like we're definitely not, we're not opposed to standing during the day. I think what I'm
I think
opposed
we
to
both do
is,
it.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think what I'm opposed to is considering standing as training by calling it time on feet.
Yep. I think so too. I think that's where we're at. I feel like we're kind of coming around and it's kind of like a Mythbuster show, right? Like all of a sudden
Mhm.
come around and we're like, it's not bad, right? But
Yeah.
is it really TOF?
Yeah, yeah. So, like the TOF that they're talking about in the article again is being in that running pattern, being in that,
Yep.
doesn't matter what pace it is, and that to get back to the heartbeats thing, that's what I always tell my athletes is like on your easy days, like I don't care what pace you go because any type of running pattern means that your heart rate is going to be elevated, meaning we're getting the cardiovascular benefits of that easy run, and that's the time on feet that they're talking. They're talking about like we don't care what intervals you're running. We don't care what pace you're going. We literally are just looking at the amount of time that you are spending running. And of course, it makes sense. The more you run, the better you get at running. It's like the more you study for X subject, the better you get at X subject.
Yep.
The more time you put into a craft, the better at that craft you get. It's one and two. The standing craft does not equal the running craft.
Right.
So um, some ways that like I try to use this principle like in my day to day is that like again like I'm like today's actually a perfect example, Loretta. So I got up, I went for a run, I got back home, I was standing, I'm fidgeting, drinking coffee, we're on the podcast. I'll probably take a good sitting break for the next like 2 to 3 hours or so. I'll get up for my movement snack, but I like to take that sitting break probably about like 45 minutes to an hour or so before I'm done with my workday. Reason being is because then I get the recovery because of course after I stand around for a couple hours, like yeah, like my legs are a little bit fatigued just from standing, especially from the run before. So I get a couple hours of recovery. I like to use that time to make sure I down another water bottle. I like to use that time to make sure I get in another snack because then I'm going to go, like say if I plan to stop working at 5 p.m., I might sit from like, 1 to 3 p.m. or from 2 to 4 p.m. And then I'll get up in that last hour and I'll get fidgeting around. So I'm warming up my body again for that run. So I'm not standing right into the run. I'm not sitting right into the run, but it's kind of like I transition from one back to the other. Because I notice if I take that little sitting break during the day, my afternoon runs, the quality of them, dynamite. And it's just a good, like, it's a good mental partition for me to say, like, okay, like before I can get up, like I got to be done with this banana snack and my water, and then I'll get up for the next 30 minutes to an hour, kind of fidget around. And by that time, I'm like, okay, I'm feeling pretty fresh. Whereas when I first started my new job, I was standing literally all day, sometimes just in the same spot. And I would get to the end of the workday and I'm like, oh, like everything just feels compressed. Like my back kind of hurts, my neck kind of hurts, my knees feel like they're flattened out. But now I'm going to go run. No, like I don't feel like I have any lubrication in my joints. So that might be a good, if you are looking for the health and well-being benefits of standing and moving from position to position, that might be a great strategy. Is like, if you do or if you do not go out for a morning run, maybe you come back, you stand around for a little bit, you start your workday, you do some of the less cognitively demanding things, which, first thing in the morning is when I like to do just kind of my busy work until my brain really fully turns on. Then towards the afternoon, when I have the cognitively demanding stuff, I'll be sitting down, taking that sitting break, chug my water, chug your snack, and then get up for the last couple minutes before you log off. So that way your body kind of warms back up and you can go out for your run.
Yep.
So,
Great advice. I don't my day is not quite as structured as yours, but I do have a standing desk. I actually have it set up that I can do standing in the van as well as at home. But same as you, I think my day naturally flows by what my difficulty level is, right? So when it's starting to like I have to focus more, for me, I have to sit down so I can focus more, or I just can't focus standing as well. So it just kind of naturally goes, but my days, like I said, a little more flexible than yours and not like an all day work situation anymore. I mean, it used to be, but now, I kind of get to go with the flow. So, yeah.
yeah, totally. So, just to kind of wrap up here, I think we've touched on everything that we wanted to talk about and everything that we ranted about a couple days ago when this topic initially came up. Just to kind of wrap up, like time standing does not equal time on your feet training. It just doesn't. It can if you make the time on your feet or the time standing or the time walking or your work time day look a little bit more like your race. That's not to say that we should all go like super neurotic and try to make every single day really specific to our event. I think that's a recipe for overtraining, for neglecting work responsibilities, and for all of that. But the more that we can make our day to day look like our race is going to be, the better time on feet training it is, or the better time walking it is. So for those of you that are out there that are like, man, I've heard this stand up thing, like standing is the new thing. Like, I got to get a stand up desk. I should be standing up all day. Like, I would challenge that and just say, like, well, it's not that you need to be standing all day, but it's definitely not you need to be sitting all day. I think maybe we need to set up our environment so that way, we're fostering one position to the next. Of course, you're not going to be able to stay completely moving all day long, depending on the career or the job that you're in. But the more that we can take those movement snacks throughout the day, I think the more the more health and well-being that we can then foster, which can then translate into your runs later on in the day. There's better ways to get the mental training that we think that like time standing is going to give us for our runs in the afternoon. There's better ways to simulate the physical demand of what the end of an ultra run is going to feel like, as opposed to spending 8 hours on your feet and then going out for your run. If that is the way that your job typically is, like say if you have an 8 hour day, serving and you're walking, you kind of don't have a lot of options there. You kind of have to be moving and have time on your feet, with which then maybe if you can squeeze your run in the mornings, that way you're running on fresh legs and then going to work, that might be a little bit better. But yeah, continually just foster movement throughout your day, especially if you are in a stand-up work station. So that's what I got.
I think that's great. All right. Well, it was nice chatting. And next week we'll be back with Dr. Lisa Elsie, and we're going to talk about postpartum return to run. So that should be an interesting topic as well. And maybe we'll even hit some pregnancy running tips in there too. So,
Oh my gosh, I love feeling like a fish out of water. Whenever she comes on, she's always teaching me something I had no idea was even a thing. So I always love talking with Dr. Liesel. Um, Coach Loretta, I still have a couple spots for athletes, so I wanted to mention that on the
okay.
podcast too. So hit me up on Instagram or wherever. It's nice. I've kind of been able to consolidate my life down a little bit more, and it opened up a couple spots for athletes. So yeah, I'm on socials, Reese Slobodianuk. Just type in SLOBO in Instagram, you'll find me. Hit up Coach Loretta. Hit up the website. Yeah, what does Omar have coming up? We have Hennepin, we have Des Plaines River Trail, Soul Crusher. I think those are the things that are on the near horizon now. And then, of course, like Frozen Gnome registration is open. Is Earth Day registration? Next
Um,
year's stuff should be popping up pretty soon.
yeah.
Yeah.
Des
So,
Plaines River Trail. Did you mention that? That one's a new one this year coming up.
yep. Yep. I'm excited for that one. So Deanna and I actually got onto the Des Plaines River Trail for the first time like 2 weeks ago. Awesome trail for anybody in the Chicago area that has never been on that trail. Like, get out there. It's a little bit of rolling hills. It's not like like you would find it Better in Acres or whatnot, but it kind of snakes like around the. It is the Des Plaines River, so it snakes around the Des Plaines River. Kind of goes up and down a little bit. There's cool bridges. It's super well marked. So that race is gonna be pretty cool. I'm excited for that one. I'm not racing it, but I'm excited to see the first year of Michelle's ownership of the race.
Nice. And next week we have our Ornery Mule book club. We're reading The Running Club. It's a murder mystery, so it's a little bit of a different genre than we've read before. So if you want to join us, whether you've read the book or not, we're all open to anyone who is welcome. So it's Wednesday evening, so you can check our socials for that. And then coming up early October, I can't remember the date off the top of my head, we have a question and answer with the registered sports dietitians that work with us, Kylie Van Horn and Nicole Kierning. So join us for that too. And if you want to submit any kind of questions to ask our dietitians, you can reach out to me and I'll get them to them and we'll get them answered. So thanks, and we'll see you guys all next week.
All right, take care.
Bye.